The storm had been merciless, battering the vessel until it splintered and surrendered to the fury of the sea. When Olivia awoke, she found herself sprawled upon a desolate beach, the taste of salt lingering in the air. The once majestic ship now lay in ruins, its skeletal remains a haunting reminder of the chaos that had ensued. Olivia's memory was a haze, shattered like the wreckage around her. The island stretched before her, a labyrinth of tangled vegetation and looming shadows. She had been a survivor of the shipwreck, but now she was alone on an isolated isle with no signs of life. As daylight gave way to twilight, Olivia's survival instincts kicked in. She scavenged for sustenance, finding fruits and roots that would keep her alive. But the eerie silence of the island sent shivers down her spine. It was as if the island itself held its breath, watching her every move. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia's isolation grew oppressive. The island seemed to play tricks on her senses, whispers in the wind that vanished when she strained to hear, fleeting glimpses of movement in the undergrowth that dissolved upon inspection. Sleep became a precious escape, a temporary reprieve from the island's silent scrutiny. One night, as Olivia huddled in her makeshift shelter, a rustling outside startled her. Heart racing, she peered into the darkness, straining to see. A figure emerged, a silhouette, its features obscured by shadows. Fear gripped Olivia as the figure drew closer, its movements erratic and unnatural.
"Who's there?"
Olivia's voice trembled as she called out, her words swallowed by the oppressive stillness. The figure continued its approach, its presence evoking a sense of dread. With a final surge of courage, Olivia raised a makeshift weapon and took a step forward. The figure stopped abruptly, and for a moment time seemed to hang suspended. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it lunged at Olivia, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. Olivia's weapon found its mark, striking the figure and knocking it to the ground. The moon's pale light revealed a shocking truth. The figure was no more than a tangle of vines and leaves, woven together into a grotesque imitation of life. Confusion and terror swirled within Olivia as she realized the island itself was toying with her, distorting reality and conjuring her deepest fears. Days turned to weeks once again, but Olivia's sanity began to fray. Whispers echoed in her mind, taunting and tantalizing. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, and her own reflection in the water seemed to sneer at her. Every step she took felt like an echo in a world that was indifferent to her existence. One fateful night, as Olivia lay sleepless in her shelter, the ground beneath her trembled. An unnatural groan filled the air, a haunting chorus that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. The island was alive, a sentient entity that reveled in her torment. Terror ignited a desperate need for escape. Olivia fled through the undergrowth, the island's malevolent presence hot on her heels. The trees seemed to close in around her, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Shadows twisted and writhed, forming grotesque shapes that blocked her path. Gasping for air, Olivia stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood an ancient stone altar covered in vines and moss. The island's whispers crescendoed, a maddening symphony that drowned out reason. In her desperation, Olivia fell to her knees before the altar, her voice joining the chorus of whispers. In that moment of surrender, Olivia understood. The island fed on her fear, her despair, her very essence. She had become its plaything, trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment. But as she gazed into the altar's enigmatic depths, a spark of defiance ignited within her. With a surge of willpower, Olivia screamed, her voice a defiant challenge to the island's power. The whispers wavered, faltered, and for a fleeting instant the island's grip loosened. Olivia seized the opportunity, her strength renewed by a flicker of hope. Barefoot and wild-eyed, Olivia ran, her feet pounding against the earth. She sprinted through the forest, determined to break free from the island's clutches. Shadows recoiled from her, and the whispers faded to a mere echo. The island fought back, its malevolence raging against her will, but Olivia's resolve burned brighter. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she burst through the trees and onto the beach. The moon cast its silvery glow on the waves, and the scent of salt was a welcome reminder of the world beyond the island's grasp. With a final surge of energy, Olivia sprinted into the sea, the water's cool embrace a balm to her weary body and shattered mind. As the waves carried her away from the Forsaken Isle, she cast a defiant gaze back at the shadows that had once imprisoned her. The island receded into the distance, a fading nightmare that would haunt Olivia's memories forever. But as the dawn broke over the horizon, its warm light chased away the lingering shadows, and Olivia knew that she was no longer the island's victim. She was a survivor, scarred by the horrors she had endured, but unbroken by the malevolent forces that had sought to claim her soul. The whispers of the Forsaken Isle would forever echo in her memory, a reminder of the darkness that exists in even the most remote corners of the world. The Midnight Carnival had been whispered about for generations, a macabre legend passed down from one fearful soul to the next. It was said to materialize only at the stroke of midnight, a twisted spectacle that defied all laws of time and reality. As the clock's hands crept toward the witching hour, anticipation mingled with dread in the hearts of those who dared to believe. John, a curious wanderer with a penchant for the mysterious, had heard whispers of the carnival throughout his travels. His fascination led him on a path that led to a forgotten crossroads in the heart of a desolate forest. The moon hung heavy in the ink-black sky, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and dance in the breeze. Just as the clock tower struck midnight, an otherworldly melody filled the air, beckoning him forward. The sight that greeted John was unlike anything he could have imagined. Colorful tents stretched into the distance, their bright hues a stark contrast to the surrounding darkness. In each tent, eerie attractions awaited. A hall of mirrors that distorted reality, a fortune teller whose predictions turned to nightmares, and a carousel whose horses bore unsettling grins. Sinister laughter echoed through the air, and John's heart raced with equal parts excitement and fear. As he ventured deeper into the carnival's heart, he noticed a tent unlike the rest. Its entrance was adorned with ornate carvings of twisted trees and shadowy figures. A shiver ran down his spine as he realized this was the tent where the legend itself resided, the Midnight Carnival's pièce de résistance. With a deep breath, John stepped inside. The interior was a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors that seemed to lead to nowhere. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting his image from all angles, each reflection a distorted version of himself. The air grew thick with tension, and whispers seemed to slither around him. The only source of light was an ethereal glow emanating from a massive ornate mirror at the far end. As John approached the mirror, his reflection seemed to move independently, its eyes gleaming with malice. He reached out a trembling hand and touched the mirror's surface. It felt cold and slick, like liquid glass. Suddenly, his reflection leaped out, its hand wrapping around John's wrist with a grip like ice. "Welcome, traveler," the reflection hissed, its voice a haunting echo. "You seek the truth, do you not?" John nodded, his heart pounding. "What is this place? What is the Midnight Carnival?" The reflection's grin widened, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally sharp. "A place of your deepest fears and hidden desires, intertwined in a dance of chaos. You wanted to know, and now you shall." With a forceful tug, the reflection pulled John into the mirror, and the world around him twisted and contorted. He found himself in a nightmarish realm, where twisted landscapes shifted and mutated at will. Time became a fluid concept, and reality was a fleeting notion. Days or perhaps weeks passed, or maybe only seconds. John encountered other lost souls who had ventured into the carnival and become trapped in its enigmatic grasp. Some were twisted caricatures of their former selves, driven to madness by the relentless onslaught of horrors. Others clung to shreds of their humanity, desperately seeking an escape. As John navigated the labyrinthine nightmare, he discovered a thread of hope, a key hidden deep within his own fears. With every step, he faced his darkest phobias, and with every confrontation, he reclaimed a fragment of his sanity. He began to understand that the Midnight Carnival fed on fear itself, using it to perpetuate its dark illusions. With newfound determination, John embarked on a journey to confront the sinister mastermind behind the carnival, the reflection that had ensnared him. As he faced the doppelganger, he summoned the strength to reject its malevolent power. The reflection's hold shattered, and the world around John crumbled into fragments of shattered glass. He awoke on the forest floor, the sun's warm rays brushing against his skin. The midnight carnival was gone, leaving behind only whispers in the wind. John had emerged from the carnival's grip, forever changed by his ordeal. The legend of the midnight carnival lived on, a tale told in hushed tones around campfires and in darkened rooms. It served as a stark reminder that the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than one might think, and that one's own fears can be both their greatest adversary and their ultimate salvation. The security desk was bathed in the cold, sterile light of monitors. Jacob sat alone, his eyes locked on the array of screens displaying different sections of the massive corporate building. He'd taken the night shift as a temporary gig, thinking it would be an easy way to earn some extra cash. But now, as the clock neared midnight, a growing unease settled in the pit of his stomach. The building was a labyrinth of hallways, offices, and conference rooms. During the day, it bustled with activity, but at night it transformed into a silent, foreboding place. Jacob had always been comfortable in the shadows, but the stillness that surrounded him was unlike anything he'd experienced. The hum of the air conditioning seemed louder in the quiet, a constant reminder of his isolation. As the hours crept by, Jacob's eyes grew heavy, and he leaned back in his chair. He let out a tired yawn and rubbed his eyes, briefly closing them. When he opened them again, something on one of the monitors caught his attention. It was a flicker of movement, a shadow that seemed to dart across the screen in one of the dimly lit hallways. He straightened up, squinting at the screen. His heart began to race as he watched another shadowy figure move across the hallway, disappearing into the darkness. He switched to another camera, his fingers fumbling with the controls. But every screen showed the same thing, glimpses of shadows moving in the corners of the building. Jacob's breath quickened. He reached for his radio, intending to call his supervisor, but a sudden, bone-chilling gust of wind swept through the security office. The temperature seemed to drop in an instant, and Jacob's words caught in his throat. He turned toward the hallway leading to the main entrance, his heart pounding. The glass doors were slightly ajar, swinging back and forth in the breeze. Jacob's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. The building was supposed to be secure. No one should have been able to enter. His hands trembled as he stood, his instincts urging him to investigate. He grabbed the flashlight from his desk and stepped out into the hallway. The corridor stretched ahead, long and dimly lit. The only sound was the echo of his footsteps as he ventured deeper into the building. Each step felt heavier, as if an invisible weight was pressing down on him. As he turned a corner, Jacob's flashlight beam caught something on the wall, a smear of dark, wet marks that seemed to be leading further down the hallway. He followed the trail, his heart pounding louder with each step. The marks led him to a door that stood ajar, a faint light flickering within. Summoning his courage, Jacob pushed the door open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room. The air was thick with an acrid smell, a mixture of dampness and decay. The room was cluttered with old furniture and dusty boxes, the remnants of forgotten years. But what drew Jacob's attention was a figure standing in the corner facing away from him. It was a silhouette, its shape distorted and unnatural. Jacob's breath caught in his throat as he whispered, "Hello." The figure didn't respond. Instead, it seemed to tremble slightly, as if it was vibrating in place. Jacob's flashlight wavered in his trembling hand as he took a step closer. With each movement, the figure's shadow seemed to flicker and distort, as if it was struggling to maintain its form. "Who's there?" Jacob's voice quivered, a mixture of fear and curiosity in his words. Slowly, the figure turned around and Jacob's heart froze in his chest. The face that stared back at him was a grotesque parody of humanity, hollow eyes that seemed to pierce into his soul, a mouth that stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Its limbs were twisted and elongated, its body hunched and contorted. Jacob stumbled back, his flashlight slipping from his hand and clattering to the ground. The figure let out a guttural, unnatural sound that seemed to vibrate through the room. Its movements were jerky, as if it was struggling to navigate the physical world. Without thinking, Jacob turned and ran, his footsteps echoing through the hallway. He didn't stop until he reached the security office, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He slammed the door shut and locked it, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He sank into his chair, his mind racing. What had he seen? Was it a hallucination, a trick of the mind? But the memory of those hollow eyes and that twisted face lingered, etched into his consciousness. The rest of the night passed in a blur for Jacob, each moment stretching out like an eternity. When dawn finally broke, he stumbled out of the building, his legs weak and his mind haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. He never returned to that job, and he never spoke of what he had seen to anyone. Years later, the building was abandoned, deemed too haunted to be used again. Rumors of the Watcher in the night circulated among locals, a cautionary tale for those who dared to enter the dark corridors. And in the silence of the night, when the wind howled through the empty halls, the twisted figure still lurked, its hollow eyes and unnatural form forever etched into the building's forgotten corners.